Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the 2026 Grant Cycle Information Session. We're just going to wait just a couple more minutes as some more attendees come into the webinar. So bear with me for just a few minutes and we'll get going very shortly. Thank you. Okay, I think we can now get started. So hello and good evening to those of you joining from the United States, and good morning to those of you who are joining us in Asia. My name is Daniel Munier, and I'm the Asian Cultural Council's Program Officer. I want to thank you for joining us for this information session about ACC and our 2026 grant cycle, which will open up on October 1st. During tonight's information session, I'll provide an overview of the Asian Cultural Council, our grants programs, eligibility and program requirements, and the application process. This evening, I'm also delighted to introduce you to one of our grantees from the United States, Isabella MYERS, who will give a brief presentation about her very recent ACC fellowship experience. At the end of this session, we'll take time to discuss your questions. And as we prepare for the question portion, please remember to use the Q&A button below to submit your questions. And before I go any further, I should also note that we will make available on our website a recording of this webinar and a copy of the PowerPoint slides. So don't worry if you missed something or if you cannot take notes this evening, as you can revisit these materials later on. Now, to move on with some background about the Asian Cultural Council. ACC was founded by John D. Rockefeller III in 1963. We are a nonprofit organization headquartered in New York City. And ACC has affiliates in Hong Kong, Japan, the Philippines, and Taiwan. ACC's mission is to advance international dialogue and mutual understanding and respect between people in Asia and the United States. To advance this mission, ACC awards grants to artists, arts professionals, scholars, and arts and cultural organizations in Asia and the United States who will pursue fellowships and grant activities centered on cultural exchange, immersion, and research. But before we go any further, what do we mean by cultural exchange? While there are many perspectives and definitions of cultural exchange, ACC believes that meaningful cultural exchange involves person-to-person interactions, dialogue, learning, and sharing between different cultures over a prolonged period of time. Successful cultural exchange can improve understanding of themselves and the world around them. It can generate new ideas and ways of doing things. And it can cultivate community and relationships across borders. Today, ACC has awarded roughly 6,000 grants to individuals and organizations from 26 countries, territories, and regions, and in 16 different arts disciplines. And while it's not the focus of tonight's information session, it's worth noting that ACC also advances its mission by organizing public events, including our East-West Dialogue series, to promote discussion of cultural exchange and its importance. What do ACC's grants support? ACC offers 4 different fellowship and grant types that support immersive cultural exchange experiences for artists, arts professionals, scholars, and arts and culture organizations. Such immersive experiences allow grantees to take a break from their career and day-to-day responsibilities, to experience a new or less familiar place, to meet new people and build cross-border relationships, and to expand their perspectives and ability to engage with the world around them. Our fellowships and grants are self-directed, meaning grantees plan and follow their own proposed activities. But where we have an office and/or connections to alumni or other relevant individuals or institutions, we do our best to support outreach and introductions that may be helpful to grantees in pursuing their activities. We truly can't understate how valuable this alumni community is and the importance of bringing new grantees into this vibrant, growing, and global community. Before going into the details of our 4 grant programs, it's important to understand a few general guidelines about ACC's grants. As we won't have time to go into each program's specific requirements, I would strongly encourage you to carefully review the guidelines published on our website. A first point of consideration is timing and the grant period. All of ACC's funded activities must take place within the grant period. For the 2026 grant cycle, the grant period will begin on August 1st, 2026, and it'll end on December 31st, 2027. Another point on timing is duration. All ACC fellowships and grants require travel to another country, territory, or region for at least 1 month. Though we strongly encourage grantees, when possible, to maximize their time abroad, preferably for at least 2 months. A few points to also consider is the New York Fellowship, which we'll discuss in a few minutes, is fixed at 6 months, and graduate fellowships support 1 year of study with the possibility of 1 year renewal. ACC fellowships and grant activities may only take place in the eligible countries, territories, and regions listed on this slide and also on our grant guidelines page. Applicants must also be citizens or legal permanent residents of at least one of these countries, territories, or regions. And organization grantees must be registered and based in one of these same countries, territories, or regions. Next on, applicants must be an arts or cultural organization, or a scholar, practicing artist, or arts professional who at the time of their application can demonstrate at least 5 years of experience in one of the eligible disciplines listed on the screen. One exception that I should make for this is the graduate fellowship program, which does not require applicants to have 5 years of professional experience. Another important point to raise is that there are no production or promotional grants. It's important to note that ACC grants, fellowships, and funding strictly limited to supporting activities related to research, cultural exchange, and immersive activities. This means that our fellowships are not designed to support or to fund the production of new works, performances, films, exhibitions, or publications, the purchasing of production capital or equipment, promotional activities and services, activities focused on commercial and industrial design, or activities that are commercial in nature, or exclusively attending or participating in workshops, festivals, conferences, residency programs. In essence, ACC does not offer travel grants. Finally, I want to note that we do welcome ACC alumni to apply for subsequent grants. However, there are some things to consider. First, ACC alumni must wait 2 calendar years from their most recent grant before applying for another grant. Second, the New York Fellowship is a one-time award, meaning past New York Fellows cannot apply for this program again. I'll next move into the 4 grant types at ACC. But one other technical point that I don't think I raised at the beginning of the call is that there is a closed captioning transcription feature through Zoom as well. So if you do wish to have closed captions made available to you, That button is available at the bottom of the screen, and you can also follow along with the transcription. So now I'll walk you through the 4 types of grants and fellowships that ACC offers. First, we have our New York Fellowship, which is perfect for those who are looking to join a group of peers in a 6-month immersive cultural and artistic experience in the heart of New York City. All New York Fellows participate as a member of a cohort. New York Fellowship cohorts range in size, and they include fellows from diverse countries in Asia and a wide range of disciplines. Currently, ACC is hosting a cohort of 14 New York Fellows from 7 countries, territories, and regions in Asia. They include musicians who are exploring New York's experimental music scene, theater professionals who are attending workshops, classes, and performances, and visual artists and curators who are meeting with their US-based peers who can offer information and perspectives that are valuable to their research, as well as their artistic and personal development. New York Fellows are often guided by topics, themes, and questions that relate to their artistic or scholarly practices, and that will benefit from a cohort-based prolonged experience in New York and the United States. ACC convenes our New York Fellows for group activities and discussions over the course of the fellowship. Another thing to raise is that the New York Fellowship, as well as the individual fellowship, they do not serve as traditional residency programs, but rather these are opportunities for exploration, learning, experimentation, meeting new people, and reflection without the expectation or the intention of producing something or presenting new works. Onto a few logistical points. I mentioned this is a 6-month-long cohort-based program. The cohorts start in either January or July. In the application process, applicants will be asked to indicate their preferred cohort in their application, but ACC will make cohort assignments and inform awardees of their cohort at the time of the award. And finally, I just want to mention that New York Fellows must commit to the full 6-month period for the cohort that they accept. Funding-wise, New York Fellowships come with a fixed grant amount of $35,000. In terms of applicant eligibility, all artists, scholars, and cultural workers from eligible countries, territories, and regions in Asia may apply. However, US citizens and US permanent residents are not eligible for the New York Fellowship Program. Onto a few logistical matters, ACC provides support for the sponsorship of New York Fellows J1 visa. We purchase mandatory travel health insurance on behalf of those grantees. And we also offer fellows the opportunity to reserve a studio apartment at the International House in Upper Manhattan. And again, as I mentioned, over the course of the New York Fellowship, our team in New York will organize group activities, office hour appointments to discuss fellowship research and progress, and we'll take time to connect fellows with ACC alumni and other relevant contexts for a well-rounded fellowship experience. Next, we have the individual fellowship, which is ideal for those wishing to travel to any of our eligible countries, territories, or regions, and who have specific research and cultural exchange objectives in mind. Compared to the New York Fellowship, individual fellowships are more flexible in duration, typically ranging from 1 to 6 months, though we strongly encourage applicants to propose fellowship travel to a particular location for at least 2 months if possible. And as the name suggests, each individual fellowship is unique. To give you a sense of the range of objectives and experiences, some recent individual fellows have included a Hong Kong-based curator who traveled to the US to research models of cross-disciplinary arts festivals, a Japanese visual artist who spent 6 months in Hong Kong and China to research martial arts practices, and an American filmmaker who is currently in between trips to Vietnam and Bhutan to study how mobile libraries address educational and cultural disparities. In just a few minutes, as I said earlier, you will hear from Isabella about her own experience as an individual fellow. Just on a few other technical points. So all applicants must be from any of our eligible countries, territories, and regions, including the United States. And also ACC welcomes joint individual fellowship applications. So this would be for a primary applicant and up to 2 co-applicants, so 3 individuals in total. Applicants can request to receive up to $35,000 in grant funding. This limit applies to joint fellowships, and applicants will submit a budget detailing the expenses that they estimate for their fellowship activities. And similar to the New York Fellowship Program, applicants who are applying to come to the United States and who will require a J-1 visa, we will work with them on sponsoring their J-1 visa and paying for the mandatory travel health insurance. And also similar to the New York Fellowship Program, we will support individual fellows in efforts to connect with local alumni where they are traveling or other relevant institutions and individuals where possible, and also arrange a meeting with them prior to their fellowship and during if needed. Now, before proceeding to our 2 remaining grant opportunities, I want to take a moment to highlight a very exciting opportunity offered by ACC Hong Kong this grant cycle. To celebrate their 40th anniversary in 2026, ACC Hong Kong will offer 1 to 6 month special fellowships that will support research or training-focused fellowships in Hong Kong. As with our individual fellowship program, these special grant awards will be limited at $35,000 USD. All applicants from all ACC eligible disciplines may apply. And while the fellowship should be based in Hong Kong, applicants may include visits to mainland China and Macau. Those interested in applying for this opportunity can apply through our normal upcoming grant cycle and by selecting the individual fellowship application. And for those of you who have any questions about this opportunity, we invite you to email our colleagues at ACC Hong Kong at the email provided on the screen, acc@acc.org.hk. And so now we can return to our 2 remaining grant programs. So if you are planning to pursue a master's or doctoral degree in the arts at a US-based university, and if you need additional support for travel and living expenses, the graduate fellowship may be for you. In the last 2 grant cycles, ACC awarded graduate fellowships to students pursuing degree programs in diverse fields, including dramaturgy, lighting design, choreography, music, and more. But I should note that this grant is intended for travel and living expenses only and cannot be used towards your tuition. On a few other technical points, applicants from eligible countries, territories, and regions in Asia may apply for the graduate fellowship program if they are currently enrolled in a graduate program in the United States, or if they will be accepted into a program by April 1, 2026. The one other thing I should note is that US citizens and permanent residents are not eligible for the graduate fellowship. And finally, the amount is fixed at $15,000 USD for 1 academic year, but there is the possibility for renewing this fellowship for 1 additional year, depending on the grantee's performance and funding availability. Finally, we have the organization grant, which is designed for nonprofit and public arts and culture organizations. This grant is an excellent opportunity for institutions looking to develop cross-cultural relationships, to observe new or less familiar practices, and to encourage the sharing of knowledge and ideas with other communities and institutions. Similar to the individual fellowship, the organization grant program supports proposals for organizations that want to conduct cultural exchange and research-focused activities. This can include conducting activities that involve organization staff and other activity participants who would travel to another country, or inviting activity participants to the country where the organization is based. Just a few examples of some recent organization grantees. We have the American Museum of Natural History, which recently hosted a Vietnamese conservator to participate in 6 months of trainings and exchange with their staff. We also had Montez Press Radio, which toured artist-run spaces in Vietnam and organized gatherings of local artists interested in discussing their practices. On some technical points, organization grantees can receive up to $50,000 USD in funding. And as with graduate fellowships, ACC does not sponsor visas for organization grantees. It is up to the responsibility of the organization to do that research and to sponsor those visas if necessary. And finally, as with our other fellowship programs, we also want to connect organization grantees with ACC alumni, other institutions that may be of interest and relevant to the work that they're doing, and to meet with them and discuss how their activities are going and offer advice where possible. Now, before we move on to the application process, I would like to introduce a recent ACC grantee who can provide some real-life perspectives on their own experience. So joining with us now, and I'm really delighted to introduce you to her, is Isabella MYERS, a book artist, arts educator, and a 2024 ACC grantee who just completed her individual fellowship in Cambodia, where she conducted research on Khmer Buddhist paper manuscripts and traditional papermaking practices. Isabella, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Daniel. As Daniel mentioned, I'm a book artist, and I'm located in New York City in the United States. And my grant was focused on Cambodian paper manuscripts. It was a 2-month individual fellowship. And the goal of my project was to look at these particular manuscripts. Daniel, if you could take us to the next slide. These manuscripts are anywhere dating from 16th century and older. In fact, during the course of my research, most recently in Cambodia, I found that they're even older than that, dating back to the 10th century. And my interest in them is in the paper. I am a book artist, and so I am interested in how the paper was made. If you could take us to the next slide. Because of Cambodia's history, a lot of this cultural heritage was lost in the war and genocide, and over 98% of the manuscripts that existed before the war that were made with traditional means were lost. And with that, the knowledge of how they were made was also lost. So the goal of my project was to learn more about how these manuscripts were made, and also to disseminate this information in a series of workshops. We can go to the next slide. And I will say that prior to this 2-month individual fellowship with ACC, I had had a little bit of experience in the country. I had previously done a Fulbright in 2019, and I had also done a short 2-month trip to Cambodia before the Fulbright to learn more about the manuscripts. But the thing about this grant that differed from the Fulbright, here you can see in these images, I'm working with a family that I lived with during that Fulbright period. That was more a conservation-focused research grant, where I was looking at existing manuscripts like the one you saw in my first slide, and I was repairing them and also doing a material analysis. And this grant, I was more focused with cultural exchange and creating opportunities for dialogue with local people in Cambodia about these manuscripts. If we could go to the next slide. And so over the course of 2 months, I hosted 23 workshops in 17 provinces in Cambodia. And so the bulk of the work was going to local areas, like pictured in this picture. I'm at a monastery, and sharing my expertise in papermaking, showing hands-on demonstrations of how to make paper, sharing my material analysis of these manuscripts, and then also opening that up for participants in the workshop to share their expertise. And in fact, in the workshop that I'm showing in this slide, I had a really great moment where one of the teaching monks at this monastery really opened up and shared a lot of his knowledge about palm leaf manuscripts, a related form of manuscript. And we can go to the next slide. And at this workshop, this one was really meaningful because it was televised and it appeared in multiple different formats in the news and social media, and it got a lot of attention. And I would say this one was the most successful in terms of impact because the videos that were posted on social media have already been viewed over 200,000 times. And so I would say this workshop was the most meaningful for me just because it helped me to really meet my goal of raising awareness for these manuscripts that are endangered. And we can go to the next slide. And in addition to raising awareness, I was also looking to make connections with local craftspeople. And so you can see in this slide, I'm on the left, I am hosting a workshop where a local craftsperson, Mr. Lot, came to my workshop and ended up speaking at length about his know-how. So this was exactly what I wanted to happen. And I think my grant was really just about creating spaces for these kinds of unexpected things to happen. I didn't know that he would be attending this workshop, but after speaking with him at the conclusion of the workshop, we are in contact with one another, and we're building this ongoing relationship where I'm advising him on regenerating that papermaking practice that was lost. And I think the other thing that I want to mention is that ACC was really instrumental in helping me to make a lot of connections. In particular, one of my workshops was hosted by a former ACC grantee. He was a graduate fellowship recipient, Mr. Rixmi, and he hosted one of my workshops in Phnom Penh. And I also was in contact with other former grantees. So I think that something unique about my experience with ACC is that there's a really rich network of grantees from all over, and that they can get you in contact with that will help serve your grant in ways that you can't even expect. And that was all that I had for my portion.
Thank you so much, Isabella. We really appreciate that, and hearing you discuss the experience, the unexpected opportunities that came up, the meaning of the fellowship for you really brings a lot of this to life, which is excellent, I think, for grantees to be able to hear some real life perspective. And just so that folks in the audience know, if you have questions for Isabella, she will be with us through the Q&A as well. I might also have a question or two for her based on her experience and advice that she might have for applicants. But thank you very much, Isabella. And now we will move on to the grant cycle timeline. As you would know from our website where the grant guidelines are posted, the 2026 grant cycle will follow the timeline that you see on the screen. So the guidelines are published right now, but the application will not open until October 1st, 2025 at 9:59 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So it will only be on October 1st of that time that you will be able to click on the links in the guidelines to start an application, to be able to download some of the other materials that you see there. The applications will remain open until November 19 at 9:59 a.m. US Eastern Standard Time. all applicants must submit a completed application by this date and time. It's very important to not wait until the last minute. We'll discuss it in a little bit, but also important to note that as part of the application process, we request a letter of recommendation from each grantee, from each applicant. And recommenders will be asked to upload their letters to the GoApply system 1 week after the, up until 1 week after the application closes. So on November 26th at 9:59 a.m. Eastern Standard. After the application closes, we'll commence a review and selection process, which I'll discuss in a little bit. And by mid-May of 2026, we will send out notifications to all of those applicants who submitted a complete application. And finally, for just another reminder, the 2026 grant cycle's grant period will start on August 1st, 2026 and end on December 31st, 2027. Again, this means that all ACC funded travel and activities must take place during this period. ACC will not fund any travel or activities that occur before or after the grant period. So moving on to the application process, and I can see from the Q&A, some of you already have questions about this. Important to start with is that all applicants to ACC must prepare and submit their application through GoApply, which is ACC's application platform. On our website, you will find instructions to create an account for GoApply. And as I just mentioned, these GoApply applications will not be available until October 1st. Once you open an application, you'll be asked to take an eligibility quiz, which will ask you a series of questions related to our various eligibility criteria. Applicants who provide responses indicating that they do not meet a specific eligibility requirement will not be able to access and complete the rest of the application. But for those who pass the eligibility quiz, they will then be able to move on to the remainder of the application. Each grant program's application will ask a series of questions and request a variety of different materials. The application questions will relate to professional background, proposed fellowship or grant activities, timing and location of your fellowship or grant activities, the requested grant amounts, and more. And as noted in the guidelines, applicants are asked to upload a number of materials that ACC staff and review panelists will consider. Depending on the grant program and the ACC affiliate office through which you apply, you will be asked to upload a CV or resume, 3 work samples, which may include images, audio, video clips, text, or a combination of these, so multimedia samples. For those applying for the individual fellowship or organization grant, you will be asked to submit a budget. ACC provides template budgets that we ask all applicants to use. Applicants should conduct research on the potential expenses and provide reasonable and appropriate estimates for those expenses in their budgets. And finally, bilingual application forms are available and required of applicants to ACC Japan and ACC Taiwan. Those who apply through ACC Hong Kong have a bilingual application form available to them should they wish to use it, but it is not required for ACC Hong Kong applicants. Finally, I also note that the graduate fellowship and organization grant applications will require some additional documentation. So with these and with the other programs, I very strongly recommend that you take a close look at the guidelines on our website to see those materials. ACC also requires each applicant to submit contact information for one individual who will submit a letter of recommendation and 2 separate individuals who can serve as references. Please note that members of a joint individual fellowship application only need 1 reference each, not 2. Letters of recommendation may only be uploaded by the recommender and only after a complete application has been submitted. Once an applicant submits their application, the recommender will receive an email with a link to upload their letter. And again, Recommendation letters must be submitted no later than November 26th. Again, this is 1 week after the application closes. ACC will not process applications without letters after this deadline. Just going back to bilingual applications real quick, it's important to note that all applicants, regardless of the office through which they submit their application, are required to submit responses in English when they complete the Go Apply application. However, applicants who apply through ACC's affiliates in Japan and Taiwan are required to download, complete, and upload via Go Apply a bilingual application form that will request responses in Japanese or Chinese, respectively. Those applicants are also required to submit bilingual descriptions of their work samples, and if they are applying for an individual fellowship or organization grant, they must also submit bilingual budgets. And again, those templates will be available in the application for you to download. And as I mentioned, applicants who apply through ACC Hong Kong have the option of providing a bilingual application form, but again, this is not something that is required. And I can't stress enough, please read through the instructions for all of the application requirements on the website. And if you have questions, I'll share contact information for you to get in touch at the end of this session. Moving on to the application review and selection process. So starting in late November 2025 and through April 2026, ACC and its affiliates will conduct a review of the completed applications we have received. We'll be looking for eligibility requirements to have been met, and then we will assign the applications to review panels that are comprised of ACC alumni and other experts in relevant fields. ACC's review panelists will review and provide input on the applications based on our selection criteria. So I can go over those here with you now. And so first and foremost, we look for proposals, applications that are aligned with our mission of promoting cultural exchange in order to advance mutual understanding and respect across borders. This means that we prioritize proposals that involve new experiences, discoveries, interactions with new communities, and a willingness to embrace different cultures and ways of life. We also seek individuals who are at a critical moment in their career, whether these are emerging voices with potential or established professionals who are taking their work in a deeper and more impactful direction. We want to understand why these applicants believe they're at a unique moment that requires or that would strongly benefit from a cultural exchange experience. Proposal quality is also an essential criterion. Each proposal is assessed based on its impact, feasibility, and clarity. So in other words, we want to understand, is the project well thought out? Is it realistic within the proposed timeline and budget? Is the proposal clearly articulated with specific goals and objectives and a well-defined scope? Does the applicant demonstrate preparedness to execute their proposed activities? And can we expect that the fellowship and grant activities will have a meaningful impact on the applicant, their field of work, and broader communities? Fourth, we have artistic and professional merit. This is also an important point of consideration in our selection process. The review process will include an assessment of applicants' past work and contributions to and recognition within their field. Some additional supporting materials, such as an applicant's CV or resume, their biography, and letters of recommendation, will also help ACC understand the applicant's artistic or professional merit. Finally, ability to communicate or language proficiency is also considered a key factor. Specifically for grantees who travel to the United States on a J-1 visa, they are required by this government visa program to be able to speak English confidently so that they can manage basic tasks and navigate the US, but also so that they can conduct their research and have engaging conversations. Grantees traveling to all eligible destinations, though, must be able to communicate effectively to the extent that is needed for their activities. So applicants who do not speak the primary language spoken in their destination or who have more limited language skills should understand what potential language barriers may be in front of them and how will they overcome those barriers. Is it going to be an issue in the activities that they plan? Do they understand that the people they will meet maybe have a level of level of proficiency in another language that they speak? And as mentioned, ACC affiliates and our respective review panels will assess applications between November 2025 and April 2026. And so by mid-May of 2026, ACC will make final decisions on all completed applications that were submitted for review. At that time, we will email notifications to all of those applicants to let them know if they have been awarded a grant or not. Those who are awarded a grant will be asked to let us know whether they wish to accept or decline it. Awardees will also be asked to review and sign ACC's grant agreement. And finally, ACC will publicly announce the 2026 grantees later in May 2026. And depending on the timing of your fellowship and the destination, ACC will soon be in touch afterwards to arrange next steps in processing the grant payments, collecting travel information, and preparing for visa sponsorship, if applicable. I would like to now dedicate the rest of this information session to answering your questions. I hope some of you have already submitted questions for our consideration, but for those of you who have not yet, please use the Q&A feature in Zoom to submit your questions. But to begin, I will start with some questions based on what attendees have already submitted through the Zoom registration page, and then we'll move on to some of the live questions that you all have provided here. And first, I just want to thank you to those who have registered and submitted questions. It's really helpful to hear what is on your mind. The questions that I've brought together here are in some cases paraphrased or chosen because they may be widely applicable to applicants. So first, what is ACC looking for? This is a classic question. Many of you might already be thinking about this. And to answer it, I would say, simply put, and similar to the selection criteria we're looking for, we want to find applicants who have a deep and personal interest in the cultural exchange experience. Applicants who share ACC's belief in cultural exchange as an important means of improving understanding, respect, and relationships across borders. We're looking thus for activities that would align with and will support this mission in the long term. We also want to understand if there's some indication that this is the right moment for the applicant to pursue this fellowship or grant activities that they have proposed. And finally, we're looking for clear, specific, and detailed responses to the application questions. Questions about the applicant's background, their proposed activity, why they want to pursue this fellowship. This is why, again, the importance of discussing the selection criteria earlier. They all relate to this and what we're looking for. And further, this is just what we hope to find in all ACC grantees in their proposals, regardless of the grant type and the activities that they want to pursue. Another question. I understand that ACC prefers fewer destinations, but what if I propose a fellowship in 3 or 4 countries? It's true, and indeed, ACC prefers proposals for more immersive experiences in a single place over a prolonged period of time. And this is so that grantees can maximize their understanding of another culture, so they can build long-lasting relationships and make time for unexpected opportunities that may arise, similar to what Isabella was mentioning earlier. ACC will consider proposals that include travel to 2 or more countries, territories, or regions, but including more destinations in a proposal, we would say, generally makes the application less competitive for ACC. So we would recommend applicants explain the reason for visiting multiple destinations. So think about if there is a research-related question or a strong theme that brings those places together. We also want to understand if there are any logistical issues that come with multiple destinations and how the applicant may manage those challenges. Another question. What if I have already spent time in the place where I want to pursue a fellowship? So there's some similar thinking with this one. ACC grantees have pursued fellowships and grants in countries where they have already spent some time. Isabella shared her own example of this, where she had previously traveled to Cambodia as a Fulbright scholar. But just so that you all understand as well, when an applicant has already spent a considerable amount of time in a proposed destination, for example, they've spent a year or more in that particular place, living, traveling, or working, their application will start at a competitive disadvantage, we would say. So in this case, applicants who propose traveling to a place that they're already familiar with will need to be able to provide good, strong reasons for returning to that place and what the cultural exchange impact is that we should expect for the applicant or for the communities that they will interact with, or for people at home that they will bring the fellowship experience back to. Very similarly, can I pursue a fellowship in a country where I hold citizenship? And I think there was a question submitted similar to this already. So this is possible, though with the exception of the New York Fellowship and Graduate Fellowship, which is not available to US citizens. However, like the previous question, applicants who want to travel to a country where they hold citizenship status are generally less competitive. So we're going to want to understand the strong case for why visiting, spending time in that place where they hold citizenship would mean for a impactful and meaningful cultural exchange experience, and how this will align with ACC's mission. Which ACC office do I apply through if I am a dual citizen of two eligible countries, territories, or regions? One of the first questions in the application will ask you to select a representative ACC office. Applicants should select the office that corresponds with their citizenship or legal permanent resident status. So for example, a citizen of Taiwan should select ACC Taiwan if they apply. A US permanent resident should select ACC in New York when they're starting their application. And if you are a dual citizen of two eligible countries, territories, or regions, you should select the office that corresponds with the place where you predominantly live. So let's take, for example, a dual Taiwanese US citizen who is living in the United States and whose career and home life are based in the United States. That individual should apply through ACC in New York. And if they were a Taiwanese citizen who has US permanent resident status, they would also apply through ACC's New York office, as US permanent residents are required to live at least 6 months out of the year in the United States. Another question, what if I'm not proficient in the primary language or the predominant language of the country where I want to pursue my fellowship? So this will depend on a few things. And as I mentioned earlier, New York fellows and individual fellows who travel to the US on a J1 visa must have a confident level of English. That means that they should be able to manage basic conversations and daily life in the US without considerable communication challenges. It also means that they should have the proficiency required to execute their activities, whether these include interviews or group discussions on a specific topic, and those may require greater proficiency in English. I should also note that ACC's application does not require US-bound applicants to submit language test scores, but shortlisted candidates for the US-based fellowships will be interviewed by ACC staff and thus should be able to demonstrate confidence in speaking English at the time of those interviews. Just another couple of points on language. If a grantee travels to a destination in Asia where they do not speak the predominant language, they should similarly consider the challenges that may come with navigating daily life and conducting the proposed activities. So if the grantee has a strong level of English and understands that English will be spoken widely by the people who they will be meeting with or interviewing, then the language concern may be less of an issue for that applicant. But if an applicant cannot expect this, or if their activities require a more advanced level of proficiency in another language, they will need to consider and explain in their application how they will overcome, how they will manage that language barrier. And just another point to raise as it relates to budgets, individual fellows and organization fellows can also include a budget line for interpreters or translation services that may support them in their activities if they believe it will be necessary. One more advanced question that I want to include here is, what if my proposed fellowship is multidisciplinary? So we acknowledge that many artists work across multiple disciplines. It may have an interest also in pursuing research or exchange activities that relate to multiple fields of practice or fields outside of their normal practice. So I want to note that the 2026 application allows applicants to select one discipline with which they best identify professionally, and one discipline that best relates to their proposed activities for their fellowship or for their grant. This means that an applicant who best identifies with visual art, for example, can select visual art when completing their personal profile and adding their professional discipline or their career discipline. But they can also select a separate field. Perhaps it's dance or film or something else when selecting the discipline of their proposed fellowship. If you're planning to explore or conduct activities that relate to multiple disciplines of work during your fellowship, we would recommend that you select one of these disciplines that you believe best connects with what you want to pursue and your practice. You may also provide further explanation of this in your responses to the other activity-related questions. Now, I would like to take some time for questions from the audience who's joining us live on Zoom. My colleagues have been reviewing some of these questions and identifying some, and I'll also take a look through the questions here. And just in advance, I want to say that we won't be able to address all of the live questions this evening, but I will share some instructions in a little bit about how to contact ACC and our affiliates for other questions that you might have. So we have one question here about experience. So what counts towards the 5 years of professional experience for artists? Do the 5 years have to be consecutive? And does it count if it happened before we received a terminal degree? So experience does count if it comes before a terminal degree. So for example, if you applied later in life and completed an MFA program or a PhD later, the professional experience that you have in your field prior to that degree program or during that degree program is included in the 5 years of experience. The 5 years of experience should relate to the field that you work within. It can include teaching. It can include exhibitions that you've produced, employment at an arts or cultural organization. But please ensure that you can demonstrate that through your resume, your CV, the biography that you submit. And if applicants have other questions about specific experience-related items, I would also encourage you to email the relevant ACC office. Another question coming in, can the joint application for the individual fellowship be from, can the joint applicant for the individual fellowship be from a different field of expertise? And this person provides an example of artist curator and arts administrator, for example. Absolutely. So in short, if you want to submit a joint fellowship proposal with one or two other individuals, and if you are a visual artist and you have two co-applicants that may be in similar but different fields, like this, as this person suggests, arts administration, for example, or curation, that's entirely acceptable. But when you select the discipline for the fellowship, you will select one discipline that you believe best corresponds. It's okay if in reality the fellowship activities are multidisciplinary, but we would ask you to consider one discipline that best describes the frame of reference, the framework that you're completing your fellowship, the substance that you're focusing on. So I would consider that when you are working with joint applicants. Do we require any selection, announcement, or invitation from US-based art organization before the application? So I think this audience member may be thinking about, does an arts organization in the US need to provide an invitation in order to pursue a fellowship in the US? They may be considering traditional residency programs. One thing I would note is that the individual fellowship program is not intended to support participation in a traditional residency program. However, if an applicant wants to collaborate, partner with an arts organization or cultural institution as an individual fellow for their fellowship, that's absolutely okay. They're not required technically to have an invitation from that institution to submit their application. It could be that they are in discussion with them at the time of the application. It's not something that we have a requirement for, but also consider how important, how critical it is to have that organization affiliation in order to pursue the activities of the fellowship. Because if you cannot, if your fellowship is essential to, if it's essential to partner with that institution and it's unsure that they will work with you, that may make it less feasible of a proposal. Another question that we have, can we apply for multiple grants? If the organization that I'm working for is planning to apply for ACC, would it be a conflict of interest that I apply for the individual fellowship as well? I don't think it would necessarily be a conflict of interest, and I think we would need to know more about the particulars of it. What is the role of this individual at the organization, and who within the organization is applying for the organization grant? There may be more of a conflict if, let's say, for example, a director of a department wants to submit a organization grant proposal, and they also, so on behalf of the organization, but that individual as the director is also submitting an individual fellowship application, that may be more of a conflict. We could discuss that on a case-by-case basis. But if you work for an arts institution and that institution, you know, is submitting a organization grant application, and you are not related to that application in a direct way, it's not something that you're leading or managing, and you are applying for an individual fellowship or a New York fellowship unrelated to the organization grant proposal, then that should be fine. Does ACC help connect the grantee to museums and research facilities, for example, to organize an event? So this is a really good question, and it gets to ACC's network and grantee support more broadly. So I'm glad somebody's raising this here. So I guess I'll start with when ACC grantees are interested in meeting individuals or institutions that relate to their research, we first want to see, are there members of ACC's alumni network who would be really relevant, who are local to where the fellowship will be pursued? Those opportunities, it's really important for us to make those connections and to activate the community. We love to make those introductions. But if there is an institution that that ACC does not have a connection with, we're open to discussing that as well. In some cases, a grantee may be in a very good position to do that outreach, but ACC, when it's possible, when the request for an introduction is relevant to the activities that are being proposed. So in this person's example, they were thinking about for organizing an event, or if it's some other activity, if that is related to the focus of the fellowship, then certainly we're happy to help and to help in those cases. But we will want to understand, what is the relevance, and is it feasible? Is it easy for us to make that introduction? And what connections do the grantee also have? We also like to provide guidance and support in those efforts as well, and to help grantees reach their goals. But also important to understand that ACC cannot secure introductions to anybody or any institution. And so it's very, very important that grantees are able to pursue their activities independently. So if there are institutions they want to work with, if there are activities they want to organize, they need to be able to do it independently and on their own. We will provide support in terms of brainstorming, advice, guidance, and introductions where we can. But all grantees must be independent and able to submit, to take on those challenges as they go along. Let's see what other questions we have here. We have a question on budget that I think is a helpful one. We haven't talked about budget very much yet. Can budgets include covering housing costs and childcare, pet care costs in the US? Are we still responsible for those during the period of the residency? So one thing again to note, these are not residencies, these are fellowships that are focused on research and cultural exchange. So just want to point that out. But on the budget question, so ACC will cover direct expenses in budgets that are directly related to the research and exchange activities. So travel costs, for example, accommodations at a hotel or for an apartment where one is traveling, expenses to attend performances or conferences or other things like that. But the fellowship funding cannot be used to cover family members, and it cannot be used to cover other costs associated with life back home while the grantee is pursuing their fellowship. Let's see. We have a question about recommendation letters. Can you speak about a good letter of recommendation, especially for someone who has not studied art formally in an academic setting? Is a colleague okay, like a fellow artist? It's a very good question, and this could apply to many different contexts. The most important thing to consider when identifying a recommender is, does that individual know your practice very well? Do they believe in the work that they do? Can they speak to your ability to pursue the activities that you want to engage in? It doesn't have to be a professor or an academic advisor that you had. It doesn't necessarily have to be a direct supervisor that you've had. It really depends. There's not one single model or type of recommender. The most important thing is understanding their relationship with you, how well they understand your work, why they think a cultural exchange, a focused fellowship would be valuable to you. So it may be another member of the arts community, but I think best is to try to balance immediate direct familiarity also with somebody who has experience, somebody who knows a particular domain. So it can be challenging to figure that out sometimes, but take time early on. Do not wait until the end of the application to contact somebody or to identify a recommender. Begin as early as you can to ask that individual in advance, to let them know what the timing will be, and to ask if they have any questions. Another point too, there was another question about formatting or the length of cover letters. We don't have a fixed limit on the length or a minimum length for cover letter or for recommendation letters. There's not a specific format, but the recommender, if they are in a particular institution, they should use that institutional letterhead if they can. They should include their title, contact information, so forth and so on. Here we have another good question. This is more for after grants have been awarded. So if I am awarded the grant, but encounter obstacles in obtaining a local visa, what would happen? Would ACC withdraw the grant in that case? It's a very, very good question. And we get this from time to time from grantees. So we want to be very supportive and helpful with grantees, and especially when they are experiencing obstacles that may not be of their own doing, that may be out of their control. And visas can often be that case. So if an applicant applies for a visa, whether it's to come to the United States or to travel to another country, if they're denied that visa, we welcome them to try again if they think that it is something that is advisable, if it's something that they are willing to do. It's also important to understand if there are any consequences for multiple attempts of submitting a visa application. If ultimately they are not able to secure the visa, we may be in a position to terminate the grant, and that would be in discussion with the grantee. And assuming that the grantee has done everything necessary to complete the application process for the visa successfully, and they've been responsible, we would just terminate the grant. And if there's any remaining funds that have not been used for the grant, we would ask the grantee to return those funds to ACC, but they would not be responsible for paying back funds, again, so long as they've followed the process properly and in good faith. A very, very good question. And I think we'll have time for just maybe two or three more after this. After the travel, research, and the grant period is over, are there any deliverables or responsibilities from the grantee to ACC? It's a very, very good question. So as I mentioned, these are not production-focused grants. And it's rare, and I think a really excellent opportunity for all of you to consider is that we don't ask you to produce a work of art, to produce a film, to write a book. We want you to pursue the cultural exchange, research, and immersion activities that you've described in your proposal. One thing that we ask all grantees within the first 30 days after their fellowship is completed is to submit a final report. So the final report, don't be too worried. It's basically a document that will ask you a series of questions in Go Apply about your fellowship experience. It'll ask what you thought were the highlights, challenges, what you learned, if you have recommendations for grantees going to that place or those places. And we also want to understand what feedback you have for ACC so that we can continue to improve our grant making program and the support that we offer the grantees. There's also an opportunity that to submit any media collected. So photos, videos, audio, documentation that you would like to share with us, because that can be very helpful in us inspiring future grantees and support for this work. Okay, another question. On the website, it states that the research of the grant must occur after August 1st, 2026, and before December 2027, December 31st, 2027, we should say. If my proposal requires some extended research that takes place over time, can I do one research trip for 1 month in August 2026, and the second trip for 1 month in August, I think they meant to say August 2027 or in December 2027, 1.5 years later. So we strongly discourage multiple trips for the fellowship. We understand that in some cases, it may not be possible to do 2 or 3 consecutive months for fellowship research, but we want to ensure that as much as possible that fellowships are done in a very consistent way. And so it may be possible to do 2 trips, but again, it may have an impact on how competitive the fellowship proposal is, because again, we want to ensure that the grantee is able to go somewhere, fully immerse themselves as much as possible, make connections, and to continue to build those relationships. If you put several months or even a year between those trips, it undermines that objective that we have in mind. And so we are strongly looking for applicants who are looking to do consistent travel. But if there are particular reasons for breaking up a fellowship, please do include the specifics about that as much as possible in your application, and why that is important. I think we might have time for one more question. Just looking through the list here. Colleagues, if you also have another question that you want to put into the chat. And you know what? I think I might reserve the last question for Isabella. Isabella, if you don't mind coming back on the screen here. I wanted to ask you, Isabella, as a way of coming back to your presentation. I guess it's a 2-part question. One is, what do you see as some of the future implications or opportunities post-fellowship from the experience that you had? How are you considering continuing to move forward those relationships? What has come to mind so far? It may also be too early. And the second question is, if you had advice for applicants or interested applicants tonight, what would you offer them to think about when preparing their application? Or what would you tell Isabella from 2024 or 2023 rather, when preparing that application?
Great. Thank you for the questions. Yeah, so the first question regarding what I see the future of this work post-fellowship being shaped by, I'm working on proposing a book with an organization that I worked with in country. So that's exciting. But even more immediate than that, I've actually already, because we live in a digital age and because social media is so readily available, I'm still able to contact a lot of the folks that I met in Cambodia. And actually, what was it? Two days ago, I woke up because, the time difference. I woke up to a message from one of the individuals I met at the last workshop that I held, and he is already starting his own papermaking endeavor and has already made 2 different sheets of paper. I'm so excited. So really having that opportunity to see firsthand those impacts has been amplified, I think, by you know, the exchange that we experience with social media. And so I think that would take me into answering your second question, which was what advice would I give to applicants? And that would be to plan a really structured grant that leaves a lot of spontaneity to occur. So I created a very structured itinerary that I didn't end up following to a T. So there was still a little bit of flexibility, but I also went into it with that confidence of knowing this is what I want to accomplish. These are the places that I want to go. But then also, I think it might sound like I had a lot more connections than I really did. I did not. I just went in there and I went and tried to introduce myself to as many people as possible. Oh, and then one just small piece that I didn't think of in advance. When you do get into country, have a bilingual business card already printed with all of your local contact information.
Thank you for that, Isabella. And I think that's a really good point in terms of preparedness. Think about those things that may come up that are small, but can also be very helpful when you're out meeting people. I think the point on application planning is also really, really good to think about as well for applicants. And some of you may have, very specific ideas in mind, and some of those may benefit from providing a very clear structure in your application. It doesn't need to be a day-by-day itinerary. That's not what we're looking for. But giving us a sense of structure of what you want to learn, what are the activities that will help you in that learning process or meeting people. And I think also just going back to what Isabella said about some of the outcomes of the fellowship, community is really, really important. It's a really valuable aspect of what ACC does. It's a priority for us, and we hope that's a priority for applicants and grantees. So think about how you want the fellowship to expand, who you come into conversation with, who you learn from, the people with whom you may be imparting new ideas on your way out. So thank you again, Isabella, for joining us for the Q&A, and for all of you who have been submitting questions tonight and beforehand. Before we close out, I just want to make a couple points on contacting ACC moving forward. So again, the guidelines are published on our website. We didn't discuss everything in detail this evening. So I would really, really encourage all of you to take a close look at the website for those guidelines. We also have translations made available in Japanese and traditional Chinese as well. And once the application opens, for those of you, if you have any technical questions about using the Go Apply platform, whether it's creating an account, accessing your account, starting or completing an application, please email application@accny.org. That will be the best way to get responses on technical questions. But if you have any questions about eligibility for a particular program or eligibility for a proposal that you have in mind, we would ask you to please email the appropriate ACC representative office. That office will be based on your citizenship or permanent resident status and where you predominantly reside, as noted below. So citizens and legal permanent residents of China, mainland China, Hong Kong, and Macau should contact ACC Hong Kong. Citizens and legal permanent residents of Japan, ACC Japan, Philippines, ACC Philippines, Taiwan. And for all other eligible countries, territories, and regions, you may contact ACC's New York office. And I just want to, again, thank all of you for joining us this evening, for your patience, for your interest in joining us in this application grant, this grant cycle. We look forward to many strong applications from across Asia and the United States. And again, please don't hesitate to contact us over email if you have any questions. And I wish you all a great evening, the rest of the day, and we look forward to being in touch. Thank you.